In a meeting with senior government officials, President Vladimir Putin called Western nations an empire of lies. It's the second time he's used the term. In retaliation to growing sanctions from the West, Mr. Putin has banned 36 countries from using its airspace.
I invited you to talk about questions related to economy, finance. We have discussed this subject with Mikhail Vladimirovich Mishustin, Prime Minister of Russia, talking about those sanctions which the so-called Western community, as I called it in my speech, an empire of lies tries to realize against our country. Let's begin, please.
Well, for more on Russia's invasion of Ukraine, our ICE correspondent Dan Warring joins us now. Dan, glad to have you join us. Well, looks like the squeeze is really on. US is cutting off Russia's central bank from dollar transactions. What more do we know? What more can you tell us?
Well, yes, you're right, indeed. The pinch is being felt amongst the everyday Russians. Basically, they can no longer use a Visa or MasterCard to collect cash or to pay for transactions. They've also got problems using Apple Pay and Google Pay that have become a way of life. So basically, their way of purchasing goods has been stifled. Mortgage payments have skyrocketed since the Russian bank put interest rates up to 20% to try and stabilize the ruble. Obviously, we're now seeing lots of businesses suffer because of the global sanctions. One major industry that is suffering this morning is actually aviation because of the various fly embargoes for Russian aircraft. At the moment, basically most of Europe and Canada have banned or closed their airspace for Russian aircraft. The US has yet to do so. They've said it's on the table. The White House says it's something that they could implement, but at the moment they choose not to, although many analysts believe that will eventually come. But the biggest issue with the aviation is two issues, one of which is that people getting a flight from Russia are now having to almost go 3 hours out of their way just to start flying on the route, which is actually costing hundreds of thousands of dollars a day. The other is that Russia doesn't actually own many aircraft themselves, they lease them. And a lot of aircraft are leased from companies in Ireland. Now, under the new EU sanctions, basically the Irish companies are having to repossess over the next 3 weeks all of these aircraft. So basically when they're landing in a foreign airport, for example, yesterday in Turkey, a couple of aircraft were basically refused takeoff rights whilst the owners took control of them. So basically the aviation sector in Russia is virtually collapsing, and American Airlines overnight announced that their long-term deal with Aeroflot has now been cancelled indefinitely. So basically for everyday tasks in Russia, bearing in mind it's Ukraine where the action is, Russia obviously is the country that is taking this action, but it's actually affecting local residents.
Effects in other countries. Now, we're expecting President Joe Biden's first State of the Union address later today, and he was going to use that to make some political stance and push some of his agendas back home. But now the Russian invasion into Ukraine is making him and his team to basically adjust that address to highlight this crisis. Dan.
Yes, well, President Biden as we was talking actually on Arise America overnight that he's not only had a bad year, but he's now going to have a quite a tough night because, as you said, he was using this time tonight as almost a springboard to almost reinvent his presidency. His approval rating is around 37%, which is one of the lowest for a president so early on in his presidency. However, he has to look like a global leader, and this is the problem. Since Afghanistan, his foreign policy has seemed weak, but at the same time, he needs to show that he is tough stance, but he is clear, and the Americans have been clear that this is not America's war, despite what the narrative is, and despite people, opinion polls saying America needs to do more, America needs to send troops in Ukraine. America is, as it has always said, is supporting NATO countries, and of course Ukraine is not a member of NATO, so therefore all these American troops are supporting NATO countries along the borders of Ukraine, along the borders of Russia, but not actually static foot in Ukraine, but are sending military might. But there is no doubt that the current action in Ukraine is going to dominate the speech tonight.
Thank you very much, Dan, for bringing us up to date on the goings on. And of course, we do know that the US has said they're monitoring that 40-mile long convoy of Russian military heading to Ukraine's capital, Kiev. And in the meantime, Australia has committed $50 million in lethal and non-lethal aid to Ukraine as well. And we wait to see how things pan out as the day unfolds.